You can call me Mystic Mike because I predict these things.
What's up, guys? I'm going to do my reaction and breakdown of UFC Fight Night Dolidze versus Vettori 2 that just ended. And this was a fun fight card. A lot of finishes, 9 total finishes, I believe. 6 underdogs that hit. There was some pretty big favorites that got fraud checked, so to speak, so that was unfortunate because I picked them thinking they would win. But other than that, a lot of fun fights. Not the most high level or well-known fighters, but it was still some good matchmaking and some good fights. So I'm going to start off with Carly Judice versus Nurghozay Dubin. I went with Carly Judice. I thought she'd be the more technical fighter on the feet. I was unsure about Dubin. She had that big knockout on Dana White's Contender Series, but again, I didn't think she had fought the best quality competition. Really didn't know where she stood in terms of skill level and how good she would be in the UFC. I thought Judice would be a little bit better. Just she'd actually fought people with wins before she got into the UFC and had fought decent competition in the UFC, even though she lost. But ended up getting the head kick on Dubin and getting the TKO on the ground. You saw Dubin kind of go for that fake takedown overhand right, and Judice was just too smart for that. Ended up catching her with the left high kick and then pounded her out on the ground for the win. So great win for Judice. Was a huge favorite earlier in the week, and it kind of dropped a little bit towards the end. I think as people were putting money on Dubin, think she'd get the underdog win again, but wasn't successful in that one. So moving on to Priscilla Cachoeira versus Josiane Nunes. Priscilla Cachoeira gets the uppercut and knockout of Josiane Nunes. They were really going at it at the beginning, just both kind of trading power shots. It was really entertaining to see. It just kind of looked like they were both, I throw a power punch, you throw a power punch. But I knew this was going to be a fun fight. I knew they weren't going to be shooting takedowns. I did go with Nunes. I thought she'd be able to just land the better shots on the feet and get a decision win. Didn't think she'd be able to finish Cachoeira, but I should have known. I should have known better. Priscilla Cachoeira, when I was looking at footage, looking at her record, it seemed like whenever somebody was willing to stand and bang with her, she was either putting them unconscious or winning a decision, and that's what she did in this one. So great win for her, 36 years old. She kind of gets exposed when she gets taken to the ground, so I don't think she's going to be champ, so curious to see what the UFC does, but it'd be cool to see them put her in there with another striker to kind of duke it out again, because this was a really fun fight to start the night out in the prelims. So moving on to Andre Lima versus Daniel Barez. I went with Andre Lima. I thought he was just the more technical fighter, younger guy, more athletic, more skilled, and I thought he'd get this one done. I didn't think he'd get the finish. I thought it'd be more decision. I didn't think he'd put out Barez on the feet, but he did end up outpointing him on the feet, beating up his legs, beating up his body, just kind of outclassing him. Eventually got the takedown and the rear naked choke on Barez. So sucks for Barez. Dude's very good. It's unfortunate that he did come up against an absolute killer like Andre Lima, who I think's got a lot of potential, but curious to see where he goes. 36 years old in the UFC, 1-1 now. No, sorry, 1-2 now. So hopefully they give him another shot because he is very skilled, great boxing, tough dude. So, but Andre Lima, 11-0 now, kickboxing champion, jiu-jitsu brown belt, absolute finisher, stud on the feet. So I think he's got a very bright future in this division. So curious to see who they put him up against, but I think he's a future star in the making. Only 26 years old, not even in his prime. So good to see from him. Good win. Sam Hughes versus Stephanie Luciano. I went with Sam Hughes. I thought she had more experience, was more gritty, was tougher. Doesn't have the best record, but has a lot of good wins in the UFC and a lot more high-level experience than Stephanie Luciano. She got a split decision. You could argue that she won the fight just on damage and takedowns, but I didn't think that she won heading into the decision. I'd probably be really upset if I went with Stephanie Luciano on this fight, just because I thought that she had a case for two rounds out of those 3, but she looked good. She had a lot of success on the feet at times, really outpointing Sam Hughes, but can't really ever count out Sam Hughes. She's very gritty, very tough, and was able to squeak this one out. So I'll take it. I'll take the win. Next up, Carlos Vera versus Josias Musasa. What an awful debut for Josias Musasa. 8-0 coming into the UFC. Devastating striker. Decent amount of hype on this guy, taking on Carlos Vera, the butt-scooting jiu-jitsu artist who's 37 years old. I was talking with my wife about this fight, and she asked me if I thought Carlos Vera had a chance, and I said he could catch a submission, he could roll for a knee bar or something, but I highly doubt it. I didn't think he'd be able to get to the ground, and I thought Josias Musasa would spark him on the feet. And Musasa, he landed a spinning attack. He was landing some good kicks. Carlos Vera was landing some good body kicks as well. Just caught him in a transition, caught him with a head kick, dropped him, jumped on his back, and it looked like Musasa was defending the choke. It looked like he was defending the hand of Carlos Vera, but then he kind of just stopped fighting it and tapped. So embarrassing performance. Good thing he's still young, can recover from this, but I did not have that on my bingo card. Musasa getting dropped by Carlos Vera by head kick. So interesting to see. Musasa was like a minus 700, minus 800 favorite. Got fraud checked by Carlos Vera. So, yeah, not a good look. Moving on, Su Young Yu versus AJ Cunningham. I went with Su Young Yu in this one. I thought he was just going to be more power on the feet. I didn't think AJ Cunningham was going to be able to hurt him there, and I thought he'd be the better grappler, and that's kind of how this played out. Just kind of dominated positions in the entire fight. Nothing really crazy to see. Sucks for AJ Cunningham. Got Ludovic Klein in his debut. Then he gets Su Young Yu, who's kind of a stylistic nightmare for him, and dominated him on the ground and pretty much pillar to post the entire fight. So good win for Su Young Yu. Not so good look for AJ Cunningham, but it is what it is. Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Ryan Spann. So I went with Ryan Spann in this one, thinking that, lighter man's skill, move up to heavyweight. These guys aren't the most athletic, mobile guys. I figured he could come up there with decent power, more athleticism, faster, would have a grappling advantage, a jiu-jitsu advantage, has a really good high elbow guillotine. But it didn't even look like it looked like he just put on fat. It didn't look like he put on any muscle. You would think that he would just be kind of the same size, but just didn't have to cut a lot of water weight to make it. But he just didn't look good. He didn't look anything like he did at 205. Just kind of got bullied around by Acosta the entire fight. I think he got dropped at one point. Just looked like a fish out of water on the feet. Looked very uncomposed in the pocket, swinging with Acosta. You could tell got a lot of his respect. At the beginning of the fight, second round, Acosta catches him with something, and Ryan Spann, being the low IQ fighter that he is, went for like a spinning wheel kick for whatever reason, and eventually gets dropped and knocked unconscious. So Cortez Acosta is kind of a decision machine at heavyweight, but was able to put out Ryan Spann via punches. The only other knockout win that Cortez Acosta has in the UFC is against Lucas Bursky. Other than that, he's been kind of just a unanimous decision type of guy. So awful heavyweight debut for Ryan Spann. Not really sure where he goes from here. I think he was trying to reinvigorate or rejuvenate his career up at heavyweight, just because he had such a big weight cut to get down to 205. But if he's not beating somebody like Acosta, who just has a right hand, then I don't really know where he goes from here. So I think he could beat a lot of the low-level fighters at heavyweight, like some of the guys that Costa's beating, like the Chase Shermans and Lucas Burskys of the world. But at this point, I don't trust him to win another fight in the UFC. And I shouldn't have trusted him to win this fight, honestly. So low IQ pick on my part. Moving on, Kevin Vallejos versus Seung-Woo Choi. I went with Kevin Vallejos. I knew he was going to have a size, not a frame. He was the small. He's thicker, but definitely not as tall. Seung-Woo Choi is 6 foot versus his 5'7", but he was able to kind of just bide his time. Went to the body, eventually caught Seung-Woo Choi, dropped him, and TKO'd him. So great win for Vallejos. He's got a big future in this sport. Young dude. I think he was the youngest on the card. Only 23 years old. Now 15-1. Coming out of Argentina, I believe it is. Yeah, fighting out of Argentina. Had Francis Prado in the crowd. So, and again, his only loss is to Gene Silva, who is fighting Bryce Mitchell on a pay-per-view main card coming up. So a lot of potential for this guy. I think he could even drop to 135 potentially if he needed to, but he's only 23. He'll probably just continue to grow into his frame and improve, but I think he's got a bright future for him in the UFC. Moving on, Brendison Hiberu versus DR Nurghozay. I went with Nurghozay in this one. My note, stoppage. I thought he'd have more power on the feet. I thought he could mix it up with his grappling. I knew he was going to have a huge reach disadvantage in this fight, and he did get dropped in round 1 by Hiberu. Recovered very quickly, but I gave that round to Hiberu, and then he got a takedown in round 2. Hiberu got the Kimura, flipped him over, ended up getting the tap. So another huge favorite on this card who got dropped and then submitted by the major underdog. I thought Hiberu could maybe catch him on the feet, and I knew that he was a really good black belt. I just didn't see him being able to finish somebody like Nurghozay when he's going to a split decision with Cal Machado. Nurghozay, looking at his fights and his record heading into this, I knew he hadn't fought the best competition. Some of the guys that he was fighting on the regional scene heading into this were 19-14, 18-21. So was really curious to kind of see how skilled he really was heading into this fight. Beat Emiliano Sordi to get to the Contender Series, who was 23-12. Beat a good guy, Bartosz. I'm not even trying to say this Polish last name. Sajuwick. Beat him, who's now 8-4. So I thought he'd be good enough to beat a Brendison Hiberu, but apparently not. He's got like a tick where he keeps grabbing his eye and grabbing his face, and he was doing that the entire fight. And I'm like, dude, when are you supposed to throw punches when you're spending the entire time grabbing your eye? And at some point somebody's going to time that, because they know when you're doing that, you're not going to be throwing punches when you're doing that. So eventually somebody's going to time you. I just thought that was weird. And just something that's a more skilled fighter than Hiberu is really going to pick up on and capitalize on. But anyways, huge favorite. Got fraud checked. Was 10-0 coming in. Now is 10-1. Damon Blackshear takes on Cody Gibson. I went with Damon Blackshear in this one. Cody Gibson came out of the box hot, pushing the pace against Damon Blackshear. Didn't look very good for Blackshear at the beginning. He looked like he was kind of uneasy, having to defend against Cody Gibson like that. Was able to kind of get his bearings, and in the second round got a takedown, got dominant position, and got the Kimura over him. So Damon Blackshear, I think he's got a bright future. He's 30 years old, so just entering his prime. Big for the division, huge submission threat. I think his last 3 wins are by submission against Cody Gibson, Cody Stamen, and Jose Johnson. One of the few twister submission wins. So had a bad fight against Montel Jackson, who I think is very high level though. Just got caught 18 seconds in. Took a short notice fight against Mario Batista. That they went tit for tat with each other. Lost to Farah Basharat, who at a time was considered one of the young up and comers before he got sent to the oh no, he still is. I'm thinking of his brother. Yeah, he's still 13-0, undefeated, very good striker on the feet. Not the most power, but just very technical. So, and then went to a draw with Yusuf Zalal, who I think is a former title challenger. So Damon Blackshear, two fight winning streak now. A lot of potential, very dangerous on the ground, and he's got decent power on the feet. We saw that against Cody Durden and Cody Stamen, 2 fights ago, dropping him against the fence. So I think his black belt jiu-jitsu is super high level. He's only gonna be getting better on the feet. So, and great wrestling. So more to come from him. Alexander Hernandez versus Kurt Hollabaugh. I went with Kurt Hollabaugh. I went with Damon Blackshear. Sorry if I didn't say that. I went with Kurt Hollabaugh. I thought he was going to be able to push a higher pace, land the more damaging punches against Hernandez. I was telling my wife, I'm like, Kurt Hollabaugh's a fighter, whereas Alex Hernandez, I feel like he's just an athlete. But Kurt Hollabaugh, I thought he won 3 rounds. I thought he won at least 2 rounds. Crazy that a judge gave Alexander Hernandez a 30-27 scorecard. There's no way that he won all 3 of those rounds. We got to figure something out about this, because that's just insane. I think Kurt Hollabaugh won 2 rounds out of 3 on damage. I think he won round 1. He dropped Alexander Hernandez, was landing the bigger punches, And round 2, I think he landed the better punches, even though he got taken down at the end of the round. Hernandez didn't really do anything with it. So I think Holloway won that fight. Sucks for him because he's 38 years old, losing to Alexander Hernandez, but it is what it is. But I definitely think he won that fight. But again, I got gifted the Sam Hughes decision. So you win some, you lose some. Chidi Njokuani versus Alejeu Zaleski. I went with Chidi Njokuani. I thought he was going to be the better striker. Had like a 7 or 8 inch reach advantage over Zaleski, who has been chinned in the past. I thought he was going to be able to keep it on the feet, work his strikes, work his kicks, and win a decision. I didn't think he'd be able to put away Zaleski just because he is a tough dude, but was beating up his body, doing tons of teep kicks, body kicks, really kind of hurting Zaleski. And Zaleski ended up hurting him with an overhand right, but he was able to recover. I feel like he invested enough and landed enough strikes to win that round still, even though he did get hurt, but I wouldn't be upset if they didn't give him the round. But round 2, kind of more of the same, using his distance to beat up Zaleski, eventually caught him with the knee and put him out. So good win for Chidi Njokuani. Hasn't had the best run as of late in the UFC, but that was up at middleweight against much bigger guys. His only 3 losses were to Mikhailo Lachechek, Albert Duraev, and Gregory Rodriguez, who are, pretty decent middleweights. So ever since he's dropped down to welterweight, he's looked really good. 3-fight winning streak now. He is 36 years old, but again, great striker, huge frame, great takedown defense, decent jiu-jitsu from what I've seen and what I've heard. I went with Chidi as well because Randy Brown fought Zaleski, and he's the exact same frame and not as good of a striker as Chidi, and he beat Zaleski. So good win by Chidi. Sucks for Zaleski. Dude used to be a potential title challenger back in the day. Went on a really good win streak in the UFC. I think he got some type of, I don't know what happened to him, but he got knocked out by Jiang Lang Li, and then it kind of went downhill from there for him. I think he got some type of infection or something at one point that took him out for forever, but a lot of good wins, just never really was able to put it back together after that loss to Lee. And now he's 1-2 in his last 3 fights, but again, super high level. So could still see him, coming back into the UFC and getting some wins. To the main event, Roman Dolidze versus Marvin Vettori. I went with Dolidze as an underdog. I went Chidi as an underdog and went with Roman Dolidze as an underdog. I just thought Dolidze was going to land the more damaging punches on the feet, potentially mix up his striking with his takedowns, which I wish he would do. I just feel like he's got very good jiu-jitsu, very dangerous on the ground, but he doesn't really have the best wrestling to get it there. You'll see earlier in his career, he'll pull guard and transition to leg locks or sweeps with it, but just didn't see that in this one. But he was kind of beating up Marvin Vettori the entire fight. The judges gave it to him 4-1, which I agree with. I think heading into the final frame, I had it 3-1 Dolidze or 2-2 Dolidze, and he definitely won the fifth round. So good fight. I thought Marvin Vettori would work his 1-2s and his cardio and his leg kicks like he did in the first fight. I just thought that Dolidze would be able to land the better strikes. Marvin Vettori was throwing leg kicks at the beginning, but Dolidze checked 2 of them really hard in the first round, and that kind of just completely shut down the kick game by Marvin Vettori. Dolidze was landing the better shots. He did get rocked. I think it was the 3rd round. That was the only round that they gave to Marvin Vettori, and the only round that I gave him. But Dolidze was able to recover. Dolidze is just one of those guys who he relies on his chin and his power, and he knows that you're probably going to fall before he does, going tit for tat. And that's what they did this entire fight, just going kind of tit for tat, matching each other's pace. And Dolidze was just landing the more damaging shots, getting more reaction from Marvin Vettori. Dolidze wasn't really hurt other than that one instance in the 3rd round. Other than that, he was just kind of landing his punches, even if they weren't landing completely. They were getting a bigger, reaction from Vettori. He was throwing a lot of kicks upstairs, a lot of kicks to the arms, and had a very impressive win over Marvin Vettori. I think that Dolidze didn't really want to mix in his takedowns just because he was afraid of gassing going 5 rounds. Marvin Vettori's got like a 70% takedown defense and great cardio. So I think he was afraid if he shot too many takedowns and didn't get him, he'd be kind of up against Vettori, who's just gonna continue bringing it the entire fight. But not sure where Marvin Vettori goes from here. Former title challenger, losing 2 in a row to Jared Cannonier, who's like 41 years old, and then to Roman Dolidze, who up until now wasn't really considered a top contender at middleweight. He had some decent wins back in the day, but whenever he would kind of step up and fight somebody, Marvin Vettori, Nassourdine Imavov, he would lose. So we weren't really sure where he stood. Beat Anthony Smith at 205, beat Kevin Holland by injury. So it's just kind of, hard to say where Roman Dolidze stood. And he's 36 years old. I feel like if he moves anywhere higher up in the rankings, I don't think he's going to do very well. These guys at middleweight that can grapple, that can defend takedowns, and are better on the feet, I think he's going to really struggle with these guys, the Brendan Allen, Anthony Hernandez's of the Caio Borralhos, Robert Whitakers, who can strike, who can wrestle. So I feel like we might have seen the end of Dolidze in terms of climbing the rankings. I think maybe he can get 1 or 2 more wins at middleweight if he gets favorable matchups, but I think he's just got too much of a glaring gap on the feet. I didn't think Marvin Vettori would be the one to be able to capitalize that, because I feel like he's pretty rudimentary on the feet. He's got leg kicks, 1-2s, and he's got an iron chin. That's another thing, iron chin on the dude. He took knees, spinning back elbow straight to the jaw. I don't know. Marvin Vettori needs to be studied, is all I've got to say, because you got to have a metal bat to that dude's head to even probably put him on his butt, honestly. But all in all, great card. Again, I went 8-5, which isn't awful considering how many huge favorites that got upset. But I did have a lot of good underdog picks, and there were some really good scraps, a lot of fun fights, a lot of finishes for an otherwise under the radar card. So next week is Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady in England. That's a great card. There's a lot of really good fights on that card that I'm looking forward to. So I'll break that fight, or that fight card down this week, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks.